Welcome to an at-home episode of ACX University. I'm Scott Jacoby, and today we continue our Performance Masterclass series with a special social distance edition featuring audiobook coach Carin Gilfry and narrator Kimberly Wetherell. They're in their booths, I'm in my kitchen, and you at home will get a little look at how audiobook narration coaching can help your career. Let's get to meet Carin and Kimberly and learn a little bit more about what they'll cover today.
I'm Carin Gilfry, and I am an audiobook narrator and voice actor. I started narrating audiobooks in about 2011, 2012. I was actually an opera singer first. I have a degree from USC and one from Juilliard in opera singing, and when I started, I had some time between gigs, and I really wanted to get into voiceover, and audiobooks was kind of my way to do that. I absolutely love audiobook narration because it just gives you such a chance to really act. I love the storytelling aspect of it, and it has a special place in my heart.
I'm Kimberly Wetherell, and my background might be a little bit different than other narrators. I was a theater kid, and I went to college for acting, but then I switched over to behind-the-scenes work, and I spent the next 25 years as a producer and a director of operas and films and commercials. I also wrote for a few literary magazines, and I founded and ran several reading series in New York City. So I have both a performing background and a literary background. So I feel like audiobook narration is sort of the perfect confluence of my life's work.
The thing that I love about audiobooks as a medium is that it's so intimate. When someone is listening to an audiobook, they literally have the sound of the narrator in their ears or in their car, really close to them. So it gives you as a narrator a chance to really be kind of natural and conversational and deliver the performance as if you are talking to a friend. And of course, that changes from genre to genre.
So the way that I got into audiobooks was that I was a listener first. And I had gone through a pretty major life event and was sort of reevaluating what I wanted my life to look like. And one day I was knitting and I was listening to an audiobook, and I just sort of thought, hey, maybe that would work for me. Like, it sort of fit all of my life criteria. So I turned to Google, as we all do, and ironically, one of the first things I came upon was ACX University. Once I had sort of gone through the ACX University videos, I'd heard somebody mention in one of the videos that they had been through the Edge Studio program. And I was like, well, let me Google and see what that is. And it turns out that Edge Studios is in New York City. And so I joined the Edge Studio as a student. And my very first audiobook coaching was with the incomparable Johnny Heller. And that turned out to be, the pivotal moment in my life where, I'm working with this, literal golden voice. And he told me that I could do it. And to have that validation was just so incredible. And so I just started studying, and I made my audiobook samples, and I went to APAC, which is the Audio Publishers Association conference, and I met everybody. And once I just really sort of immersed myself in the community, I felt confident enough to hang out my shingle and start auditioning.
Because I used to be an opera singer, I coach people often who are stage performers or who are opera singers themselves. And I find that everyone, if they have stage training, they tend to give a very big performance. And they tend to, just kind of overperform the text, which is not really what you need to do in audiobook narration. You can really pull back and speak as if you are speaking in a room with a person. And I think that that's one of the main things that I have to coach people on if they've been stage actors or opera singers.
I am continuously working on making my narration more natural and less performative because I haven't acted since I was 19. And I've been directing this whole time. Being on the other side now, and now being a performer, I feel like I'm having to relearn everything for the first time. And I feel like I'm constantly working on pulling things back and making it more natural, just sitting down and telling someone a story. I've been narrating audiobooks for about 10 months now, and I have 12 books under my belt. And I have worked in cozy mystery, I've worked in historical fiction, and I've done romance, both sweet and salty. But where my heart is, what I really want to do one day is kids' literature, and specifically middle grade books. Because I feel like that's the point where, kids go from like picture books to becoming like readers. And that's the time to really hook somebody to form their literary future is with middle grade. And I love that time of life. And I love those books.
What I'd love to focus on today with Kimberly is two things, actually. One, I think that there is a way that I breathe because I'm a singer that really helps with audiobook narration. It helps to get through long phrases, and it helps when you're editing on the back end. So we're going to focus on breath today. And I also want to focus on word emphasis because you can completely change the meaning of a sentence depending on what word in the sentence you emphasize. I tend to think of audiobook narration kind of like music, because I have a musical background, I assume. But spoken word really is kind of like music. So, and word emphasis is all a part of that.
So the things that I'm really looking to get out of today are learning how to pull back and really live in the text and find out, where I'm getting too actory. I'm very musical and sort of sing-song just with my daily speech, and it feels a little uneven. So I'm really looking to just constantly work on stabilizing things and maybe having it come from a more organic place as opposed to a, actory place.
I'm hoping today that Kimberly takes away some tools that she can use on her own when she's narrating books at home, and that what she learns today will really help her just feel confident in her narration and to really trust herself.
Now that we've got a little background on our coach and narrator, let's get into today's lesson with a portion from The Robber Bridegroom.
When Sunday came and it was time for the girl to start, a feeling of dread came over her which she could not explain. And that she might be able to find her path again, she filled her pockets with peas and lentils to sprinkle on the ground as she went along. On reaching the entrance to the forest, she found the path strewn with ashes, and these she followed, throwing down some peas on either side of her at every step she took. She walked the whole day until she came to the deepest, darkest part of the forest. There, she saw a lonely house, looking so grim and mysterious that it did not please her at all. She stepped inside, but not a soul was to be seen, and a great silence reigned throughout. Suddenly, a voice cried, turn back, young maiden fair! Linger not in this murderer's lair!" The girl looked up and saw that the voice came from a bird hanging in the cage on a wall. Again it cried, turn back, young maiden fair! Linger not in this murderer's lair!" The girl passed on, going from room to room of the house, but they were all empty, and still she saw no one. At last she came to the cellar, and there sat a very, very old woman who could not keep her head from shaking. "Can you tell me," asked the girl, "if my betrothed husband lives here?" "Ah, you poor child," answered the old woman. "What a place for you to come to! This is a murderer's den. You think yourself a promised bride and that your marriage will soon take place, but it is with death you will keep your marriage feast. Look, do you see that large cauldron of water which I am obliged to keep on the fire? As soon as they have you in their power, they will kill you without mercy, and cook and eat you, for they are eaters of men. If I did not take pity on you and save you, you would be lost." Thereupon, the old woman led her behind a large cask, which quite hid her from view. "Keep as still as a mouse," she said. "Do not move or speak, or it would be all over with you. Tonight, when the robbers are all asleep, we will flee together. I have long been waiting for an opportunity to escape."
I loved it. That was awesome.
Okay.
You did a great job. So good. Okay, so I want to talk about just a couple of things. Mm-hmm. So one, there are a ton of commas in this, right? And each of the commas kind of pivots the story a little bit. So when Sunday came and it was time for the girl to start, a feeling of dread came over her which she could not explain, and that she might be able to find her path. So there is a lot of stopping and starting in every single sentence of this, right? And you've been doing a great job of kind of pivoting the storytelling. But what I've noticed, which you can tell me if this bothers you at all when you are editing your own audiobooks, because this is the interesting thing about doing a book on ACX. When you do a book on ACX, often you're editing yourself, right?
Yep.
So there are ways to breathe that make it easier for you to edit after the fact. And also, I think for me, make it easier for you to give a more natural performance and not have to worry so much about your breath all the time.
Okay. Great.
So for me, what I like to do is I like to take kind of a singer's breath that is isolated from the text, so it's easy to cut out, but also gives you that steam to be able to go through a long phrase without having to take a lot of little catch breaths in the middle. So the thing to do to take a nice big singer breath is you should kind of align your body. If you're sitting, you can just kind of sit up straight, pretend like there's like a little string attached to your head. And this just creates more space for you to take that breath. And then think of your entire trunk kind of moving outward. So your lungs are going to move out, everything moves out. And it's almost like when you're swimming underwater and you come up for a breath, and you're not like totally out of breath, but you come up for a breath and you're just like, right? So try that once with me. Wonderful. Love it. Love it. Okay. Do that again, but now do it just slightly more quickly. Same feeling, same natural, but do it a little bit more quickly just so that it's easier to isolate and cut out later when you edit.
Okay.
Try. Awesome. Loved it. What I like to do also, interesting little tip, I take a breath before I hit record when I'm recording myself for an audiobook.
Okay.
Which is great because then you don't have to cut out that breath later, right? Because you're not even recording it. So let's take a nice singer breath and then try to just make everything a little bit more even and all the way through. You don't have to make it to the end of this long, long, long line. When you take a breath at one of the commas, just make it kind of natural, and we're going to keep that one in. We're not going to cut that one out because it'll be just naturally a part of the sentence. So we're taking one big singer breath. We're going to go through the phrase until it feels natural to breathe. Then you're going to do a natural little breath, and you're going to get to the end of the sentence. Let's try that.
All right. When Sunday came, and it was time for the girl to start, a feeling of dread came over her which she could not explain, and that she might be able to find her path again. She filled her pockets with peas and lentils to sprinkle on the ground as she went along.
I love that. For me, that sounded, yes. For me, that sounded like, that sounded like you had steam, right? And
felt like I had steam.
Totally. You can do that anytime in your narration. When you feel like you're running out of steam because you've been taking a lot of little catch breaths, in a place where it feels natural, you can stop, take a really nice singer breath to just give yourself that stamina to then go on and do the rest of it. It doesn't have to be a perfect performance from start to finish with the breathing.
Okay.
You're going to edit it anyway. So you may as well give yourself that time to just go ba-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, and then you have that energy and stamina.
So when we're doing punch and roll, obviously when we stumble or when we need to take a break, we go back to where we need to punch in. But when you're doing these singer's breaths, it feels like when you're then in the editing, it might take a little extra time in the edit if you incorporate them. So how do you deal with that?
So for me, I do an interesting punch and roll technique where when I need to take a singer's breath like this, I have my hand on the keyboard the whole time. I stop the recording, I take my breath, and I hit record again and I keep going. So I don't have to actually edit out the breaths after the fact. It happens during the recording process. But if you're not doing punch and roll, you shouldn't take a big singer's breath every single time you have to breathe. It's only when you really, really are running out of steam, you want to take a nice breath and isolate it so it's easy to cut. And then as you're going along, you breathe naturally and you take little catch breaths. It's just when you're really running out of steam that you really need to take that big breath and refill yourself and give yourself that extra energy.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
So let's try again from the top. And then once you get to the period, you can take another nice singer breath to give yourself some steam and then go on to the next sentence.
Okay, cool. When Sunday came and it was time for the girl to start, a feeling of dread came over her, which she could not explain. And that she might be able to find her path again, she filled her pockets with peas and lentils to sprinkle on the ground as she went along. On reaching the entrance to the forest, she found the path strewn with ashes, and these she followed, throwing down some peas on either side of her at every step she took. She walked the whole day until she came to the deepest, darkest part of the forest.
Awesome.
There.
I love it. So tell me what that felt like.
It's going to take a bit of getting used to, because I'm used to being a train and just barreling right on through, which at some point, third, fourth sentence in the paragraph, I end up completely deflating, literally. But like on the whole, it's nice because you have that like quick second to reset. And a lot of times, a new sentence is a new thought.
Yes.
So it's that minute to, okay, what is my next thought? Okay, my next thought is she's left the lentils on the ground and now she's going into the forest. So there's that quick, it's just like a teeny tiny little reset.
Yeah.
Which is actually really nice.
And to be clear, you don't have to do this at the end of every sentence. It's really only, you can barrel through as much as you want. But when you get to the place where you're feeling like, oh, these catch breaths aren't doing it for me, I'm running out of steam, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do the next sentence, that's when it's good to pause and then keep going. And it shouldn't it shouldn't take you out of the piece, right?
Right.
It's just a way to go, okay, now I'm full again, I feel refreshed and I can keep going. And those isolated breaths, I'm telling you, are so easy to get rid of in editing, to put room tone where they are, to move everything a little closer so it sounds really natural and you don't have a weird break in there. And I think it just makes the whole performance much, much better. Just as an exercise, let's try to make it super duper conversational, since that is the trend that everyone is so into now. And the way that you make it a little bit more conversational, to me, when I think of it as music, I think of the Italian term rubato, which is basically pushing and pulling of the tempo a little bit. So instead of the girl passed on, going from room to room of the house, but they were all empty, and still she saw no one, right? You want to push and pull the tempo of the delivery a little bit to make it a little bit more interesting and a little bit more conversational, because that's what we do in natural speech. So it would be more like, the girl passed on, going from room to room of the house, but they were all empty, and still she saw no one. Right? So you feel the push and pull of the tempo of the phrase a little bit. Let's do that. Let's do that paragraph right there and try and push and pull the tempo a little bit.
Okay. The girl passed on, going from room to room of the house, but they were all empty, and still she saw no one.
I'm going to stop you because that was still a little bit ba-ba-ba-ba.
Okay.
Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba, right? And I want you to, within each little comma, push and pull the tempo a little bit so that it's a little bit more interesting to our ears.
Okay. The girl passed on, going from room to room of the house, but they were all empty, and still she saw no one.
Yeah, that was cool. That was creepy. Keep going. Same idea.
Okay. At last, she came to the cellar, and there sat a very, very old woman who could not keep her head from shaking. Can you tell me, asked the girl, if my betrothed husband lives here?
I like that. Can you make the girl a little bit more afraid? Because she's going into this empty house and it's really creepy, and she sees an old lady for the first time, and I think she would be a little bit more scared. So start from at last she came to the cellar and still give us that push and pull of the tempo.
Okay. At last she came to the cellar, and there sat a very, very old woman who could not keep her head from shaking. Can you tell me, asked the girl, if my betrothed husband lives here?
Love it.
Okay.
Keep going. I love it.
Oh, okay. You poor child, answered the old woman. What a place for you to come to. This is a murderer's den. You think yourself a promised bride and that your marriage will soon take place. But it is with death you will keep your marriage feast.
I love it. I'm going to stop you right there because you did exactly what I asked with this push and pull of the tempo with this woman's line. You said, you think yourself a promised bride and that your marriage will soon take place, which makes it just so creepy and interesting to me. I love it. Great job.
Fun.
Okay, so this is the last thing. We're going to talk a little bit about word emphasis.
Okay.
So you can totally change the meaning of a sentence depending on what word you emphasize. So I like to use the phrase, my father wears his wedding ring, right? If I say to you, my father wears his wedding ring, that implies that maybe your father doesn't. If I say my father wears his wedding ring, that means like his wedding ring, but maybe not his class ring, right? You get the idea. You can change the meaning of a sentence based on the words that you emphasize. So when we get to this last sentence of our or the last paragraph of our excerpt here, pay attention to the story that you're telling. So in this first sentence, we see, thereupon the old woman led her behind a large cask, which quite hid her from view, right? We could say, thereupon the woman led her behind a large cask, which quite hid her from view, right? And it kind of changes it. Tell me in that sentence what you think are the important words to emphasize to get the meaning across.
Thereupon,
okay.
Behind. Thereupon, because of this, then this happens. So
okay.
Thereupon is a transitional word. So I feel like that's important. And led her behind the large cask. So she's hiding her.
Okay. So you think behind is, because to me when I say led her behind a large cask, that sounds a little bit odd and makes it seem like, well, not in front of a large cask, right?
Right.
Does that make sense? I mean, I guess it could work that way. Okay, tell me the rest of the sentence.
Okay. And then hid.
Yes.
So that happens. She went behind, and then it hid her from view.
Okay, let's try it that way.
Okay. Thereupon, the old woman led her behind a large cask, which quite hid her from view.
I like that. That's good. Can you do it this time, emphasizing the word cask?
Yep.
Okay.
Thereupon, the old woman led her behind a large cask, which quite hid her from view.
I think that's good because we don't have the rest of the thing here, but you can see the robbers come back with the cask. Or they come back and they drink wine from the cask, so I think it ties in nicely. Okay, just keep going and we'll go to the end.
Okay. Thereupon, the old woman led her behind a large cask, which quite hid her from view. Keep as still as a mouse, she said. Do not move or speak, or it will be all over with you. Tonight, when the robbers are all asleep, we will flee together. I have long been waiting for an opportunity to escape.
Yes. Loved it. You're so good. I love it. Wonderful, wonderful. Awesome. How did you feel about that?
I felt a little bit disconnected to the text. I was just trying to think of so many things. I feel like I left the old woman behind.
Yeah.
But that said, once I'm able to get all those layers together, it's going to be a nice little 7-layer dip.
I think that's what happens in a masterclass situation. You focus so much on what the teacher is saying that you forget to just do, just perform the story. And that's the thing with practice and with coaching is you want these techniques to be so ingrained in you that it becomes second nature, like driving a car, right? When you first start driving a car, you're like, okay, keys and brake and but eventually it becomes such second nature that you are not even thinking about driving the car. You can listen to an audiobook instead.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that was awesome. I think we should go back and do the opening section again, keeping in mind all the things that we talked about. 1, taking a singer's breath to just, have that energy and to be able to get through the line. The push and pull of the phrase so that it sounds a little bit more natural. And the word emphasis. So go ahead, let's go all the way from the top to the first murderer's lair.
When Sunday came, and it was time for the girl to start, a feeling of dread came over her, which she could not explain. And that she might be able to find her path again, she filled her pockets with peas and lentils to sprinkle on the ground as she went along. On reaching the entrance to the forest, she found the path strewn with ashes, and these she followed, throwing down some peas on either side of her at every step she took. She walked the whole day until she came to the deepest, darkest part of the forest. There, she saw a lonely house, looking so grim and mysterious that it did not please her at all. She stepped inside, but not a soul was to be seen, and a great silence reigned throughout. Suddenly, a voice cried, turn back, young maiden fair. Linger not in this murderer's lair."
Yes, I loved it. Great job.
Thank you, Carin.
Excellent.
This was so much fun.
Yeah, I really felt like you incorporated that push and pull and the word emphasis, and it was really, really great. And I loved your singer breaths at the beginning too.
Oh.
Awesome job.
Thank you.
That was so cool. I love getting to do these coaching episodes because I love seeing the narrator, Kimberly, incorporate Carin's feedback into her final read. Whether it was the notes on breath control or the push and pull between the commas to make the read sound more conversational, I just thought Kimberly did a fantastic job of taking those notes and using them to improve her final read of the piece. Let's check in with Carin and Kimberly themselves and see what they thought.
I think that the thing that really resonated with me and is something I know I need to work on is that whole rubato way of reading, the push and the pull and making things more conversational, because I think that's probably what the author intended, and how hearing the author's voice in your head, that's probably how they wrote it. That was my favorite part of it, for sure.
First of all, Kimberly is an amazing narrator already, and just as I suspected, her natural instincts are awesome. I think it was really interesting to hear how she kind of played with the push and pull of the text. I think that made the reading like a little bit more interesting and creepy, and I just loved it. So I thought she was great.
It is a bit of a challenge to incorporate all of these things at the moment, because you have, all of these new ideas coming to you. So you're forced to get rid of your old things and try to layer all these new things on top of one another, while also delivering a performance. So it's a little bit hard in the moment to try to focus while layering all these things on top of one another. But I think, over time, when, once you're able to incorporate that within your read, you're able to just forget it, and that just becomes part of you.
I think that the next step for Kimberly would be to narrate a lot more in the first person if she wants to get more into that kind of conversational feeling when reading the text, because I think when you narrate something as a first-person narrator, it just kind of helps you to make it more personal and make it more like natural speech. So I would suggest to Kimberly that she to start doing some first-person narration to practice.
So I think one of the things that I'm going to be able to take away from this and bring into the current book that I'm recording, certainly the breathing technique, absolutely, because it's going to help me sustain these longer passages. And to have that, the push and the pull, and to give it more conversational feel. I mean, what I'm recording right now is a memoir, so it's not fiction, it's somebody talking, and I am being someone's voice. So to be able to incorporate that right away, I think is going to really just amp up the audiobook several levels.
I think that coaching really helps even the coach keep these techniques kind of front of mind for their own narration. I know that when I listen to Kimberly, I think about things, for myself, what I might do if I were narrating the same passage and what I will do in the future. So I hope it was helpful to all of you and that you can incorporate it into your own narration.
That's today's episode of ACX University. If you'd like to receive audiobook performance coaching from Carin Gilfry, she can be reached at her website below. If you'd like more videos from ACX on the topic of audiobook performance, check out our playlists here on YouTube. Thanks for watching.